back. My crew here said I talk funny. And I said, how would you distinguish that from the way I normally talk? But no, they said, yeah, I got a little bit of a legacy left over from trying to use modern medicine to do some proactive things to my body. And Ty went to the modern medicine. It didn't work out as well as I thought. So I am glad to be back. And I do have a little bit of a hoarseness here, but be that as it may, we'd like to welcome all of you, especially if you have a fear of flying, or if you know somebody who's afraid to fly, or if you just like to listen to us jaw about airplanes and flying. So without further ado, we'll move on. Dieter, I want Dieter to say a couple of words about the FearlessFlight group, our Birds of a Feather group.
Yeah, so we have got a great group. We have about 640 members or so thereabout currently, and over the last couple of months, it was really cool to see how all of our members were supporting each other when, granted, not everybody was flying. Most of us weren't flying at all. But I want to highlight one really, really cool post, actually two. And it'll take me just a second here. Let's see here. Ron, what can you see on the screen currently?
Still looking at the Facebook group.
Okay, so we're gonna try, and I'll have to stop the share.
Da, 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 da. We're just a little traveling.
Yeah, that's a fun part when you're doing your own tech stuff.
You do a great job, Dieter.
One of the posts, I can at least start speaking about it. One of the posts was about emotional support animals, and so there we go. Now I am ready to share this, and please let me know if you can see our Facebook group.
There it is.
All right, there we go. So right there, one of our dear volunteers, Elaine, hi Elaine, down to Orange County. She posted an article on NPR that actually our flight attendant Diane is going to, well, Diane, there's something about the headline that
I'm just going to leap right in here.
Yeah.
I have just not a really correction, but an observation on what it says. No more emotional support peacocks as feds crack down on service animals on planes. The feds aren't really cracking down on the service animals. That's it's a little misleading as far as that particular quote.
But we're gonna get it more into.
We are going to get into it, yeah.
And then here is one of our dear members, Jeremy Francis. So does anybody else feel this way, or is it just me? And so these days it's hard sometimes to get a smile or a laugh or some laughter. So we thought we share that with you if you didn't see it. And if you're not part of the Facebook group, this is a great, I hope anyways, it's a great way to get introduced to the group. And like I shared in a post, we will be flying again. And if you're a little anxious or nervous, then now is the time to work on it so that you are ready when we're all gonna get to the air and travel again. Okay, Ron, what are we gonna talk about today?
Well, we're gonna talk a little bit first about I think the winner of the we got the Coach's Corner coming up. We talked about the Facebook group, and we got a couple of aviation news articles in the Roundup. You want to talk about Sierra? We had a contest for November.
Yeah.
For people who filled out a survey. They got a chance for a free drawing or a free coaching hour with me, and our winner was Sierra
Christian.
And so we're excited about that. She's scheduled to do our thing on Friday. So I'm looking forward to it. Sierra, if you're on, congratulations. And I'm looking forward to meeting you and see if we can't help you out getting back in the air or getting in the air with more confidence. So thanks for participating. Thanks to anybody who took the time to fill out the survey and put themselves in the hat there. And we'll be doing things like that from time to time again. And tonight we are going to talk a little bit about coaching. I'm just going to do a case study off of an actual session that I had, a 15-minute session there. So we posed the question to each one of us here about coaching. What is coaching? What's coaching to you guys? Anybody?
Diane, ladies first.
No, ladies first. That's a big assumption. Um,
That's right.
well, just on a couple of different levels, coaching is learning how. For me, it's always athletics. Coaching is learning how to play the sport, but it's also depending on your level, whether you're a young kid, in elementary school or high school, college, it's learning teamwork and learning how to receive instruction and the ability to connect with your coach and improve your performance. That's on one particular level as far as that. So Captain Eric, what about you?
Well, while we were talking about that, I thought, duh, hundreds or thousands of hours of flight instruction that I did in my misspent youth. And these, really, that was my original fearful flyers that I work with. They wanted to fly, but they didn't know how anything worked. And they were plenty freaking nervous when they got in the airplane. So my job as kind of facilitating would be to just calm them down so they could absorb information and get out of their own way rather than ratchet up their stress level to the point where they could absorb nothing or maybe kill me in the process. Yeah.
So it's about getting perspective. To me, coaching is, getting perspective and integrating new ideas and new concepts, and maybe hopefully get some tools to let go of some old ones. So,
Yeah.
and Ron, you have, do you want me to put the slides up? Are you?
Well, I was just going to say, this brings up a favorite story of mine. There's a fellow named Milton Erickson who I talked about from time to time, and he had a story that when he was growing up, he was quite gifted riding horses, and lived on a farm up in Wisconsin. And one day this horse came galloping up to their property. Obviously, it had gotten out and away from the owner, so he just saddled up, jumped on the back of the horse and kicked it in the slats, and off it went. And about 4 miles later, it pulled over. Every time it would try to steer off into a pasture or something like that, he would steer it back onto the road, and until it finally came up to this farmer's yard. And he came out and he said, "How'd you know that was my horse?" And the guy said, "No, I didn't." Or Milton said, "I didn't." He said, "Well, how'd you know to bring him back here?" He said, "I didn't know that either, but he said, I figured the horse knew his way home, and my job was just to keep him between the fence posts and give him a little guidance and motivation." And that was his model for psychotherapy and coaching. And that's something that I think I kind of had an intuitive sense of that because of some coaches in my life growing up. But that is certainly what we're trying to do here. Really, what I think coaching is you're trying to teach people how to be autonomous, because when they're in the game, they can't access you. No matter how important you are to them as the coach or a resource, they got to do it on their own. And everyone, Erickson's philosophy was everybody had innately in them what it took to find their own way home, quote unquote. And I find that with coaching with people who are afraid to fly. I really pride myself on the ability to let people tell me their story and kind of be a mirror for them, and then they figure out where they need to go and what they need to do, and that includes the timing too. And if I can say something that inspires them or provides them with a little bit of insight, so be it. So tonight we'll talk about a fellow that I had for a 15-minute coaching call this week, and I won't use his name, but we'll talk about the thing. We've been highlighting this. If this is like the PMP 101. If you're not taking advantage of this, you're missing something that we think has real value. And a 15-minute coaching call, I try to keep it within 15 minutes, but anybody who knows me knows that I tend to be not so much on the short-windedness there, especially if I get engaged with somebody. But the 15-minute coaching call is a great way to to get started if you're stuck and you don't know where to go. So we're just going to talk about some of the things that came up here tonight, and I'm going to ask the group here to if they have any insights or things that they like to know. So here's this person. He flies extensively. He would like to fly in the next 90 days. He has a couple of specific trips in mind, but the big thing that he's working for is he hasn't flown in over 3 years, and he wants to complete or wants to go to Spain in the spring because he's the best man for his best friend's wedding. And so one of his goals is to do a shorter flight. And so we talked about that. He first noted his fear as a result of a bad experience coming back from Cancun to Phoenix. And for some reason, he was coming back to Phoenix, but they routed him through Detroit. So he went from Cancun to Detroit back here, which added to I think it added to the imprint on his psyche of how bad that experience was, because while he had flown and he had never had any problems throughout his life, on this particular flight there was something different about it, and something different about him perhaps, and it just set him off. And so not only did he have to endure this horrendous turbulence from his perspective on the way back to Detroit, but then he had to sit on the ground and get through the anxiety of going flying on to Phoenix. He was able to, he had a couple of business trips coming up after that because he does fly quite regularly. And he made one of them from Phoenix to Dallas, Fort Worth, but he debated driving back. He finally found the courage to get on the airplane and come back, but that was the end of it for him. And he never flew beyond that. And so it just shows you how traumatic it can be.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's amazing.
So the current impact on his life, he has extreme anxiety. And if any of you are out there listening can identify with this, put down some notes. When does your anxiety start? For him, it's the instant he has a thought that's in any way related to flying. It doesn't have to be the flight. It can be thinking about booking it. It can be a commercial that comes on TV. It could be a Southwest commercial talking about a discount on airfare, and that'll trigger him. And if you've been through any of our programs, that's the first place we start, is we teach people how to identify their triggers. And we'll call them Casper. For Casper here, his triggers are both mechanical. What's going to happen on the airplane, and go back just one second. What's going to happen on the airplane and to the airplane, and the other one is the emotional, which we call mechanical. The other one is emotional. He can't fly with his family anymore. So, and he does have one child who's they're about to become empty nesters, and they want to celebrate that with a life of travel. And he's feeling like a dead weight on the family there, particularly with his wife, because he's afraid. And he has a very understanding boss, ironically, who is also afraid to fly. And we talked about how we might be able to work him into the equation because he also has issues with flying. But at least he has an understanding boss who's been able to work with him. But it's getting to the point where the options are getting fewer and farther between. Let's see.
He's both typical and atypical. Those are typical concerns, but it's atypical that he was flying fairly recently.
Yeah.
And did fly those legs and then had it ball up on him.
Yeah, and you saw that one slide pass that identifies the mechanical and that he has a history of childhood trauma. This is something that often comes up. I mentioned an ACE study, ACE. It's a long-standing study done by Kaiser Permanente, the health organization, and it shows you get a rating of 1 through 5 of major childhood traumatic events, and if you have even one of those, it sets you up for trauma later in your life. And I think that's part of what I see in Casper, and I see in other people who, particularly those that flew for quite some time without any issues, and then all of a sudden they had a bad experience, and it just sets them in their ways there. And if I knew the process, we'd probably be rich helping people overcome that. Current status is he's not flying. He has been diagnosed clinically with a general anxiety disorder and OCD, which are definitely post-traumatic issues. And he takes Lexapro. Now, making a quick distinction between Lexapro, which is an SSRI, and I tried to, I failed to ask him, and I wanted to follow up with him to find out whether he was actually evaluated, where they did a blood test and they measure this. And this is one of my pet peeves with a lot of people prescribing things like Lexapro out there, is they don't get the data on the person, and they just kind of prescribe it just kind of as a generic thing. Same way with Ativan or as Xanax. And he's been taking Lexapro for the past 30 days, and he has noticed a decrease in it. And the way Lexapro does is it increases, it's designed to increase the supply of serotonin in your brain, and serotonin is the basically the body's happy what am I looking for? What's the word for not chemical, but hormone. So that and so people who have a shortage of serotonin do suffer from, ironically, anxiety and depression, which was confusing to me when I first started working on my psychology stuff, was to find out that those are simply different sides to the same cone. To the same cone. A couple of things about that. Others in the other category, or other drugs in the SSRI category, are Prozac and Zoloft. You may know about that if you're taking those. And as I mentioned, they do affect the chemical composition of the brain. They both, it requires a prescription and time to build up in the bloodstream. And you also have to be careful about going cold turkey with those, because you can have some severe adverse side effects and withdrawal there. That SSRIs are in contrast to Xanax, which is part of the benzodiazepine family, and those work differently. Instead of balancing the chemicals, the serotonin levels in your brain, those simply act like a big mallet whacking your amygdala over the head. And what it does is it just dulls it, similar to the effect that alcohol does. So the downside, if you've heard our discussions about a study that tracked people who took Xanax versus the control group, you found that people who did take Xanax suffered more when they weren't eligible to, or when they didn't have available to them any of the medications afterwards. So it's like when you get drunk or you dull your amygdala, it can't remember, it doesn't have any memory of the event to integrate some of the things, techniques, and strategies that you might have otherwise available to you. Okay, so strategies. We want to talk about strategies a little bit. PMP 101. We're going to continue to push that. Dieter went to great lengths to get me off my butt and get that program out there. And the PMP teaches you how to lean into life. And what that means is it teaches you how to increase your awareness. Meditation and mindfulness is not about calming yourself. It's not about doing anything. What it's about is just paying attention to the thoughts that are running through your mind, and be an observer to your own life. And it teaches you how to monitor thoughts to increase your awareness. You want to provide any details about this, Dieter, as far as things that, other than clicking on the link and getting over there and registering if they haven't already?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we mentioned it last week, and we also want to mention it this week. So there's a free audio, 3 audio tracks that you get with that, and we also included a short little video series as well. So there are 2 free programs that you can access right now, and go to the link. You just provide your name and your email, and then you get an access link, and you have free access to that. You can stream those files. And I just run one thing. Susan Miglagio is asking, do they have that kind of blood test? So what you were talking about.
I have written, I will follow up with this, because I've written to Casper and asked him if part of his diagnosis was with either a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Okay. And my understanding is that only the psychiatrist can write prescriptions for medications, and I believe they're the only ones that can do tests like that. So yeah. I don't see how you could assess somebody as to their actual levels of serotonin without doing a blood test, frankly. So, but I shouldn't say that, because I don't know that for a fact, but we'll find out. Susan, and see in that, because I think medications are administered and prescribed, I think, with a good heart on the part of many therapists, but and psychologists, but I think they're overprescribed, to be honest with you. And there's a big thing about neither SSRIs nor biodiazepines are allegedly addictive per se, but they can create dependence. And I've seen a lot of people who fly and seemingly have developed a dependence on that. So, okay. So get over there if you haven't, and register and get started on that, because it teaches you how to become your own observer, which is really critical if you're going to work on your fear flying. The other strategies that we have, if you haven't purchased the How to Overcome Fear of Flying book, do it. It's really easy. It's designed. We made it in a size that you can carry with you. You can pick it up and start anywhere in the book. You can put it down whenever you want. And sometimes it's better to pick it up, read a little bit, and then put it down. So putting it down can be a affirming act of educating yourself. But if you haven't got that, go ahead and do that. It provides an overview of what we believe, our philosophy, and the Fearless Flight method. One-to-one coaching, of course, we highly recommend that. For most people, one session is enough to give people the confidence that they can fly next time. And then the long-standing kit that we have is our Fearless Flight kit, and that provides immediate relief. And long ago, when I first came out with that 18 years ago, we had people that purchased that and had no contact with me or anybody in Fearless Flight, and were able to successfully fly and manage their anxiety. So that speaks to the power of that. It's the granddaddy of our tools and products here, and we highly encourage you to do that. And it's something that you can use as a daily meditation. And we have many people that continue to use that. They've long since overcome their gripping fear that they had, but people call me up and say, hey, I listen to that sucker every day just to kind of center me. And then the last thing is that we got a 201 online course that we've been working on for some time, and when we get that out, we'll have the next rung on our ladder to replace some of the things that we lost during the COVID epidemic here. So
and also there is going to be a Fearless Flight Kit 2.0 coming out. It's going to be like a rolling update to the existing kit, just because, you know, we have really learned a lot, and that's one of the benefits of the survey. And so there's going to be a brand new NeuroSync audio part.
But it works for me right now. Yeah. So because, you know, if you've been hung around us at all, audio to me is one of the most dynamic ways that you can break through and get rid of and overpower some of the debilitating inner dialogue that gets so negative. And the problem is with, and why we came up with the NeuroSync, which is part of the Fearless Flight Harmonizer, and that is when you are in the early stages of trying to overcome your fear of flying. It's one thing to have a fear of high places, or, you know, so you don't have to go next to the edge of the Grand Canyon. You can stay back. But when it comes to flying, it's such an overwhelming experience for most people, and an emotional experience that little, you've got so many hours of rehearsing that little negative voice in there that says, hey, Ron, I thought we weren't going to do this. Hey, Ron, I thought that you know, we had this deal and we were going to get on this stupid thing. And it just automatically kicks into gear. And the beauty of an audio program is that we've done the scripting for you. We do the talking for you, so that all you have to do is sit there and lean into it. So that's the value of having audio programs like our NeuroSync programs that we're updating and upgrading. So I want to take just a couple of minutes. This is kind of in transition because I got these articles out of the news. I saw a psychologist who had written a couple of articles, and a freelance author picked up on them, and she wrote a couple in sequence there. And the first one is, it talks about understanding the fight or flight response. You know that's the issue with those of us who have issues with phobias. It's that your normal fight or flight response, your normal survival instinct has run amok, and it's hijacking your rational mind and taking you to places that you don't want to go. And it really is more of an attention disorder in that you can't not put your attention where it wants to take it instead of where you'd like to do it. So that's what mindfulness is about. That's what the sync meditations are all about. And so we want to just talk about this. So the fight or flight response is a normal response to an abnormal, it's an abnormal reaction, or overreaction to a normal response, because our minds don't care whether it's a real or a perceived threat. It behaves and triggers the biological response to everything in a way as if it were real. And you know that your sympathetic nervous system, the accelerator in your body, starts to amp up, increase your level of arousal, and it starts other biological functions like shutting down your digestion, increasing your blood flow to your larger muscle groups, so that if you have to, you can either flee or flight. And once the biology starts, it's really hard to reverse that and turn it back the other way. So when's the time to get over this? When you're in a situation where you're not all revved up. And that's why all of our products are designed to be used. Yeah, you can take them with you on the airplane, but the best place to use them is preparing in advance. And with just the Fearless Flight Harmonizer, or the Fearless Flight Kit alone, if you use that sucker 3 weeks before you're set to fly, listen to the harmonizer once at night, once in the morning, and then during the day, just long enough to listen. If you notice yourself getting amped up or getting triggered, listen to it just long enough until you feel your attention coming back under your control. That is one of the most marvelous things that the feedback that we've gotten from people over the years. There was a little blurb in here that this psychologist did on fear of public speaking. I think he was trying to relate. He talked about public speaking and fear of flying to show people how something is innocuous as speaking in front of people. You know, you may not have even noticed it, and then all of a sudden you stand up in front of somebody and you notice that no matter where you move, all those eyes are following you. And if you're like me, you become very self-conscious. Fear of public speaking was a huge issue for me when I graduated from college, and I swore that I would never, ever speak publicly again. Fortunately for me, unfortunately for you, I got over that, and part of it was getting confidence in what I had to say, and not judging myself, and not going back into my ancestors' worries about the tribe excluding me or rejecting me. Okay, let's see the next Okay, this is something that was in the article and I wanted to just comment on it. And I was joking with Eric and Diane and Dieter when we started this. The author said he has a theory that one of the reasons that people get anxious when they get on an airplane is because during the early stages of boarding, until we start the auxiliary power unit and we put on the airplane's air conditioning system on board, he theorizes that we're breathing out all this carbon dioxide, and basically we're putting people in an environment that's going to cause them to hyperventilate, which is where you breathe too much carbon dioxide and you lower your pH of your bloodstream. That's poppycock. That goes back to the people that when I first heard people tell me that when we switch the airflow from the overhead, we divert some of it to the start valves on the engine during engine start to get the engine spinning, there's a slight decrease in the cabin airflow. And we had people out there that said, oh my God, Ron's trying to suffocate me. And that's not the case. There's still air going through there. It's just not as high a volume as it was before. We've never killed anybody during engine start that I know. Have you ever, you're aware of that either you or
no, I'm hopeful that the flight attendants would have called me if we killed someone during engine start, which they probably would have, unless they were a commuter and on their last leg home, then they might not have brought it up.
Yeah.
But I don't think we've
nothing. We never bring anything up when it's go home day. No.
Right.
And that's why we recommend first thing you do is sit down and get the airflow where you want it. It doesn't have to be blowing right down on you, but somewhere where you feel some of the benefit. And so because that's where a lot of people get triggered with their claustrophobia right off the bat. So,
when we're boarding, the doors open. I mean, there's plenty of air. Trust me.
When you add
the ultimate strategy that we're talking about.
Oh,
is-
sorry.
I'm sorry, is systematic desensitization. And that's what we really do. That's what the Fearless Flight method is all about. It's about introducing yourself to not just the sensations, the sights, sounds, and sensations of flying, but also the thoughts that go through your mind. And that's why the neurosync programs that we have developed now are ones that engage your mind and actually put you in that environment no less than Diane or Eric or I have been in when we've been in actual aircraft simulations. Diane just completed her annual evaluation here.
Good.
Congratulations, by the way.
you.
So she said, I'll be out there for another year.
For another
And,
year.
But
Yes.
that's what it's about. They run her through tests and evaluations to practice things that we'd never do on the airplane or never experience, so that if and when that situation ever presents itself, she's already started a process in her mind that is much easier to engage. And that's what you do when you go through Fearless Flight. We use audio primarily, and we use our other videos to support you by practicing when you're not in the threat, in the actual environment, so that you can have rehearsed it somewhat before you get in there. Because once you get in there, as I mentioned before, once your biology triggers, it's really, really tough. So desensitization in a nutshell is relax. And I put down there, calm yourself, but sometimes that's easier said than done. And that's why we have developed the neurosync programs in the Fearless Flight Harmonizer to help you get through that. And where we have already done the scripting. So you don't have to come up with your own words like you would in a meditation or a mindfulness exercise. And the big thing about the programs and the tools that we have is we want to teach you, don't fight the fear. If I tell you, do not think of a pink elephant, immediately a pink elephant pops into your mind's eye. No, we teach you how to embrace it. That is how you get over anxiety. You learn to make friends with it and wait for it to pass. It will pass, we guarantee you. Okay.
That guy's going to get arrested if he's in California.
Actually, Ron, let me just here. Tracy has a question for Captain Eric, I'm gonna say.
Okay.
How long does it take to get through that auxiliary power phase where the air seems to be insufficient?
Just usually no more than 2 minutes per engine start. So it's supplying the auxiliary power unit, supplying air to the back, and then the only time you take it away is for the engine start. And once the engine start cycle is completed, either the engine or the auxiliary power unit is then supplying the air to the back again, which then repeats for the other engine start.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
It's not long.
Like, let's see, I can't use my orgasm analogy. That's probably not appropriate for this group, but it's the difference between a pleasant experience sitting on a stove for 2 seconds or versus sitting on a stove for 2 seconds, right? Relative time that you think you're enduring all this pain is quite different. So if you're anxious, that's why we want you to listen to the harmonizer from the moment you get to the airport that day. Crank that puppy up and keep it going until you get so sick and tired of listening to my voice and the other voices in there that you want to reach through and strangle us, because then we know that we've got you moving down the path. Okay. But the time that you actually endure engine start where there's a decreased airflow is really, really minuscule compared to the rest of the flight there. So, okay, the last thing for me to close is what you want to talk about. We didn't talk really in detail about the animal thing, did we?
No.
Talk about that, and then we'll close
Sure.
with the passing of the legend.
Sure. So one of the things in the news this last week was I'm going to read because I made notes. The Department of Transportation last Wednesday put out a notice that, I'm going to read this, carriers are not required to recognize emotional support animals as service animals and may treat them as cabin pets. For my airline and virtually all of them, there are 3 categories of animals as far as how they are listed and labeled and treated. One is a cabin pet. And that's a pet that rides in the cabin, has to be in a carrier that has to be approved. The cabin pet cannot come out of the carrier at all. You're not allowed to open it, pet the dog, cat, whatever. And the airlines charge for cabin pets. You have to make arrangements ahead of time. The airlines are different with regard to how much they charge for a cabin pet. They may have different policies for how many pets an individual passenger may have, how many pets may be in the entire cabin, that sort of thing. But so that's a cabin pet. The other two categories in the past have been service animals and emotional support animals. So those are the three: cabin pets, service animals, emotional support animals. Service animals traditionally are very well trained. They are trained for specific reasons, for psychiatric assistance. For example, a passenger is hard of hearing, and the dog may be trained to assist. So they are trained, and there's another definition. They're trained for specific tasks. That's how they are described and defined. They do work or perform tasks for the benefit of a person with a disability. And so those animals, traditionally they have been dogs. They may be brought on into the cabin, and there's no charge for them. They do have to make, again, arrangements ahead of time. At some point in the past, I don't know how many years ago, there was another category which was introduced, and that's emotional support animals. And the situation with that is it could be dogs, cats. There was the famous one of an emotional support peacock. They've brought snakes, guinea pigs. They've brought a lot of different animals onto the plane, into the cabin. And as long as the individual, the passenger, described it as an emotional support animal, and there were minimal amounts of paperwork and validation that needed to be filled out, that individual could bring that animal on board without a charge. And so what happened over the course of time was, unfortunately, is those individuals started abusing the policy. And service animals are extremely well trained. Again, they're for a specific purpose. For me, for a lot of the flight attendants, we have obviously no problem with that. The emotional support animal, I will tell you one specific situation I had. The other flight attendant and I, we had a passenger with an emotional support dog. I won't even say the breed. And the dog growled at me a couple times during the boarding process and nearly bit my other flight attendant. They are not, emotional support animals are not always trained. Most of them aren't trained. Lots of them, unfortunately, again, the system has been abused. So the Department of Transportation has ruled, and there's the different unions for flight attendants. We are very excited about this and very happy, because the upheaval in a lot of the cabins that some of these animals produced was becoming very, very problematic. They were urinating, defecating, biting, growling, creating, they're just not trained. And so now, in order for an animal to be declared a service animal, they're going back to a lot of different validations from veterinarians and so on that will attest to the training that a particular animal has. And so if a passenger wants to bring their emotional support animal on, it is going to be labeled a cabin pet, and they will have to pay for it, or it will ride in cargo. So that's a very big deal for us as the flight attendants back in the cabin, in the back of the plane, for safety reasons for ourselves, safety for other passengers, and for the comfort of all of our passengers. So it's a pretty big deal. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, as you said, that basically it was, people began to see that as a way of bypassing the fee for
the money. And it can cost a cabin pet the charge can be from $125. Yeah. I mean, it can be very expensive.
And most airlines limit like a couple per flight or something.
Of them. Yeah, exactly.
So it's a step in the right direction. It was going that way before COVID, and
right.
It got up there. So anyway, so the last thing is I titled it "Passing of a Legend." Just last night, Chuck Yeager, who was a long-standing pioneer in aviation. He was the first man to fly supersonic. I remember actually seeing that recording the day that he broke the record. It was on TV way back when, and so he was kind of a legend in my mind, and in the background there for the part of the reason that I wanted to become a pilot. And I thought there's an interesting footnote when I was reading about him today. It talks about he only had a high school education, and he joined the service in the Army Air Corps because the Air Force didn't get formed until 1947. He joined the Army Air Corps in 1941 and was first a crew member on a bomber, and he got sick when he was flying. So we could say that Chuck Yeager actually had a fear of flying. And so if that is an inspiration for all of you out there to, people ask me all the time, hey, can I ever really get over this? Yes, you can. How you get over it? You have to want it, and you have to be persistent. So with that, if you want to hang in there, and we'll hang in there with you until you get to the point where you want to be with your fear of flying. So anyway, we got some comments up there. I'm not sure whether that's what we were intending, but there we go.
Sorry.
So with that, unless anybody else, we have any closing questions?
We have just a couple of comments, and I just want to again highlight Jim. Thank you so much. Jim said that what you were explaining in the coaching corner segment, that was similar to his own experience and his own story, and so he thought that Casper and you would be a really good match. And the other thing is he has 3 parrots. I did not know that about Jim. And so he missed his chance to have them be his
Emotional support parents.
support animals. So sorry,
Well, I
Jim.
don't know if you missed it, Jim. You're just going to have to go to a little bit greater length in order to affect it. So, but I think if it's other than a dog or a cat, you're headed up or down a
You better teach those parrots some really good conversational skills.
I don't remember what happened on this case, but I loved it. And it went to one of the fairly high federal appellate courts in Miami back during the heavy import-export days of Bolivian marching powder. The DEA was pounding on a door of this place where they felt nefarious activities were going on. And a voice said, "Come in." And they're kind of looking at each other with their automatic weapons and their flak vests and everything else. They knock on the door again. The voice goes, "Come in." And they go, "Well, we don't want to make him ask 3 times." And they open the door is open. And there's a massive amount of powder, pills, weapons, money, really everything they could have hoped for. And they were invited in. Nobody was home. They were invited in by the parrot.
The parrot.
And the parrot at the door knocked, and the parrot invited them in. And this went through all the federal district courts as to whether it was a legal entry or not, because even though they got all this hooch, to have been invited in by the parrot, serious amount of legal debate on whether they were entitled to be in there.
Well,
all right, I'm going to resist.
it's their own fault for leaving the parrot in the room.
Yeah.
I'm going to resist the temptation because I have one night Johnny Carson asked Buddy Hackett, "Buddy, do you know any clean jokes?" And he told one about a parrot, but I will reserve that for a later date. So, anyway. All right.
I think I
Well,
remember
thanks,
that one.
everybody. We appreciate your energy and showing up and supporting us. And we hope that we can continue to support you in the way that you deserve. So with that, we'll see you again next week for another episode of Fearless Flight Live. Have a great week and stay safe.
All right.
Bye.
Good night.